Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the M3 Market Update. After a 2-week hiatus, I apologize for going missing in action, but I had a lot to take care of, one of which was a family trip that just got a little too crazy with family activities. And then, secondly, I moved, which we'll talk a little bit about. But welcome back to the M3 Market Update. You may guess I'm going to say there's a lot going on. One day I'm not going to say that, but there is, and there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of noise. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the builders in this episode before we get into the updates and some exciting new information and data that I have. I'm very excited. But let me just talk a little bit about what's going on with me. So I officially left Pittsburgh, packed up all my stuff, and it's in storage. What I'm going to be doing this summer or what's left of this summer, is I'm going to be traveling around, staying in some Airbnbs, going to some new build sites, and definitely looking into kind of where I believe that we're going to have an influx of inventory. So in a weird way, I am, on purpose homeless at the moment because I'm trying to figure out where I want to live. And so I'm kind of, walking my talk at the moment. I am home base will be here in Johnson City, Tennessee. I'm currently in an Airbnb here. And so this will be primarily where I am, except for probably the next couple of weeks and the other little trips that I'll take. So I'll keep you posted, but I will say that video quality might be compromised as I go to these different locations. So just bear with me. Additionally, I've been trying to do the videos on Tuesday. Obviously, it's Thursday. So when I'm taping this, hopefully it uploads okay later. So I just want to say that it might be a little spotty for the rest of the summer in terms of what day I'll actually do a video, but I am going to do my best to do one every week. And so I will tell you though, once you get on the road, things get a little crazy, but I'm very excited about the Florida trip. I think I'm going to learn a lot. Last time I was there, it was just so crazy, so busy. I'm going to take my time, going to visit 30A, going to visit sort of the Panhandle. I'm also going to go over to sort of Boca, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, those areas. If there is an area in Florida you want me to visit or you want some information, please, put a comment. I would be happy to consider if it's possible, I will go check it out. And you guys often are my best sources of intelligence. And as I think we can all see that the data just isn't telling the story, and it's also inconsistent and confusing. And that brings us right to the builders, right? So about a month ago, I sat here and we talked a little bit about housing starts and that crazy number, and it was just like gangbusters. Well, couple different things. One, let's talk about sort of what had been going on in the media. Ever since the first of the year, I could see that there was still demand out there. We've talked about that, but most people thought that there wasn't any demand at rates because they have this idea that rates are the reason that the housing market is frozen. That may be true for investors, absolutely. But it doesn't have anything to do with your regular folks who have to make choices about where they're going to live. Now, if you're, a savvy homeowner who's in the top 20%, yeah, you're going to think about rates, of course, and everybody's going to think about them, but it's not going to be the sole thing driving your decision because, what really, in my opinion, and what I hear from homeowners more than anything is about the home prices. Even they can't tap into that equity because if they sold their home, they wouldn't be able to find something at nearly the size they need for the amount of money they want to pay. And so they'd ultimately have to even pay more. So they'd lose all that equity. So I think there's a colossal misunderstanding about what's going on in the housing market because most of the people that I hear talking about it on FinTwit, in the financial media, they're really coming at it from a different perspective. And that's usually of the homeowner and honestly the top 20%. They're not coming at it from the regular American perspective and what they are seeing and feeling. And so that's really what I'm trying to give you a sense of both sides so that you can get a rounded picture of the housing market. But what happened in the financial press once, sort of these new builds, we realize existing inventory, which had been snatched off the market by, long-term rental, Airbnb short-term rental, builders realize, hey, this is my moment. Let me get out there. Some of them were a lot faster than others, but they realized that they could see the demand themselves, and they could go out there and make a deal by doing a rate buy down, by giving other incentives, like maybe they give you a washer and dryer, maybe they pay for your solar for a year. And this worked out really well through the spring. And I think that, it got a lot of builders excited. I've talked in my Substacks, I've talked in these videos about gain on sale. And what that is when someone writes just, that initial contract, which is nothing really, then the originator can book the gain on sale, what they think they would make from selling that loan. And that's very early in the process. And so for the builders, it's super important to keep the engine going, to keep that gain on sale going. Now, some of you may remember, like back when I went on the road in February, there was a Twitter poster named Raleigh Fams, and he was at a major builder talking about the fact that they were being told or being incentivized to just get these contracts signed, whether the borrowers could actually qualify or not. And that he was seeing this, all these cancellations, all this, because people need that engine to keep going. If it stops, then you cannot cover over all of the expenses, challenges, etc. And so you have to keep it going. So, somewhere around April, I think, a very well-placed article from Bloomberg comes out talking about, hey, if you want to buy a home, these new builds are a really good deal. I tweeted out, please don't do it or be thoughtful, because you didn't want to end up being the only house in a subdivision that was occupied. Because based on what I had seen on the road, that was a real possibility. Well, fast forward a couple months, people read that article, and they went out and they bought these new homes. Now, some of them may have been great decisions, I don't know. But ultimately, now what's happening is, so you had all these all these housing starts last month, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's it. The housing market's going to recover." Well, 30 days later, whatever, here we are. And number one, and I told you this at the time, the prior 2 months had been revised down in that survey. And now here we are. And sure enough, prior month was revised down, and it's also down. So guys, the housing market's not turning around. This is structural issues that we're going to have to deal with. We're not going to get away from that. So whatever you hear in the media, please, at me on Twitter, comment here on YouTube. Let's talk it out, because I don't want any of my listeners get into a position, whether you be a homeowner, whether you be an investor, whether you're currently a renter looking for a home. I really want you guys to be armed with the information to make the best decision. I'm not going to make that decision for you, but I want to arm you with the information. And again, I'm really sorry I wasn't here for the past 2 weeks, but in a way, it's given me a lot of great perspective to bring back to you guys, because I spent the time, and this is something you'll read about if you read my Substack. I spent the time really kind of on the road, looking around me, trying to talk to people and get a sense of what's going on in the economy out there. And what I talk about in my Substack is that family trip was to Hilton Head. And I had been one other time, and I remember standing in line, being miserable, so crowded, so awful. Very different story this time. Now, there were places that were crowded, like the grocery store. There were also, there's, out of all of our restaurant dining experiences, there was one where we had to wait. But you could see across the restaurant, it was not nearly as crowded or full as it had been, back probably in 21, even though I wasn't there. What was going on is that it was just, everything was running slowly. It was taking too long to sit down, taking too long to get your food, taking too long to get your check, taking too long to get your drinks. And that can make places appear busier. But in reality, they're not turning the tables. They're not that busy. And so I think that a lot of what we've seen as busyness in the past few months has actually just been slowness related to labor shortages, and that we're not running efficiently, kind of in our restaurants and our theme, all these places, because we don't have the labor. And that can create all kinds of different problems. So I'd love for you guys to check that out, the Substack, where I talk about that more in detail. As I said at the beginning of the show, there is just so much going on. I wish I could cover it all. That's why your questions are so important, because there are things I just can't cover, guys. And I will tell you that, as we're kind of turning this corner, because the other big thing I talk about in my Substack is right before I went on the road, I had noticed in the portfolios I oversee some real serious weakness in FHA, which is typically your first time homeowner buyer, and VA, which are your veterans. I was waiting for the detailed report from Black Knight to come out to see if they saw it too. Well, they didn't have any detailed charts, but what they did have was a footnote that said that absolutely FHA and VA delinquencies are up above pre-pandemic levels, and they hit it in a footnote. But I think that even that the footnote is there is telling, because they don't want egg on their face when everyone starts to realize this is happening. And when what I saw in looking at June data is I saw Fannie and Freddie coming right behind it. Now that'll be very interesting to see if Black Knight sees that pattern as well. But guys, I talk about this. I came up with a little phrase that I'm going to use a lot, I feel like, in the next 3 years. But we've had a ton of credit quality gospel singing. What the heck do I mean? What I mean is that all of us have been indoctrinated that credit quality is supreme. And if it isn't, then it's not being lent out. The money's not being lent out. Well, guys, I'm here to tell you there are a couple of reasons this is just not true. And believe me, I was the last person of sort of people in this camp thinking that this could be potentially true, because I came from the industry where we were gospel singing credit quality. We were not doing private loans. We were using the automated underwriting systems of the GSEs. So in our minds, we were doing everything perfectly. Well, then you start to hear about inflated credit scores, etc. Self-employed borrowers, this is where things can really go sideways, as well as just run-of-the-mill fraud. Like, a lot of people on their applications will say it's going to be owner-occupied. It's not. And so there's all kinds of reasons there's weakness in these portfolios that many have not seen. And with all of the moratoriums, the forbearances, etc., it's been hiding, and it's starting to peak out. Now, again, we're not going to have 1 million foreclosures tomorrow. Please check out my deep dive on loss mitigation. But we are going to see stress in your prime borrowers. And so a lot of the reason people misunderstand mortgage is because they actually, why do they misunderstand where we are right now? Because they misunderstand what happened before. They think it was related only to subprime. Guys, that's how the fire started. It started as a liquidity issue because of subprime, not the subprime borrowers triggering in the entire GFC. No, liquidity. And then as it persisted, it hit your prime borrowers because they were being buried under increased expenses and then job losses. So I'm probably going to try in the next several weeks to do kind of a revisit of the GFC, because I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about what actually happened in mortgage. There's a great Fed paper. Okay. So this was a huge, long introduction because I've missed you guys. I haven't been here. I'm so sorry. I promise to try and not do that ever again. But let's get started because, let me just start with the thing I'm super excited about. I finally have Airbnb listings for these cities. And so for all of the cities I track, I now have Airbnb listing numbers, average daily rate, occupancy, and I'm going to have access to that information. I'm working with a really cool team. They have the data now, but we're working to enhance and enrich the data so that it kind of gets out of all of these things we're seeing when we look at the difference between AirDNA, Mash Advisor, and all the data providers out there. So super excited about that, and just excited we have the data now to really see, not wait for Inside Airbnb, who publishes once a quarter. We can now see more real time the listings. Now, not perfect, but it at least is going to give us an indicator. And one thing I did in the Substack that I encourage everyone to check out is I did a little calculation where essentially I took listings for sale, I took listings, Airbnb listings, I divided it, and you can look right away, for instance, in Asheville. For every one listing for sale right now, there are 3 Airbnbs, guys. And I think that most of you who are watching this video will not deny that we have seen all over social media people complaining about their Airbnbs not being occupied. You know, a lot of what I'm seeing is people are talking about they vacationed in Europe because it was simply too expensive to vacation in the US. And if you've ever heard the saying, you know, the cure for high prices is high prices, well, there you go. Our Americans went and spent the money elsewhere. That's what happened. I had 2 family members that did the same thing. So, you know, I feel like this summer is a little slower, but it's going to be a very important summer, an important time as we watch these different themes start to materialize. And guys, I see it happening. You know, all the themes I talked about at the beginning of the year, they're all playing out to some degree, some more than others. But by the time we round to September, October, I truly believe that no one is going to be talking about this lack of inventory anymore. Now, I also think things should happen faster than they should, but I'm going to hedge and say fourth quarter, between the beginning and end of fourth quarter, realizations are going to start to occur, especially as these Airbnbers, long-term rental folks, start coming under liquidity stress, because the credit crunch has not even gotten started. It hasn't, guys. And so this is what's taking so long for us to see these things play out. Okay, so without further ado, I'll quickly go through the list of the updates this week. Just excited to be back with you guys. And again, apologies for the absence. So top cities with the largest percent increase in inventory week over week from last week to this week. So Brattleboro in Vermont was up at like 13%. Now, they don't have a ton of property, so any movement is significant. But guys, you know, with what we saw going on in Vermont with the flooding, you know, I'm very curious about this as people may be looking. And I don't want to debate about climate change. What I will tell you is we have intense climate events, and our insurance market is reeling. And so something like what happened in Vermont is going to have a national impact, because it's going to make updates to models, updates to how these insurance companies can stay in business. And so every time we have one of these extreme weather events, it's going to have a national impact, because these companies as well, you know, they kind of do all kinds of crazy arbitrage, and it's always a little surprising what they're buying to hedge their risk. And if you're into that kind of thing, I would encourage you to look into those balance sheets, etc. But climate events are absolutely going to shape the housing market. So whether you believe it or not, in terms of overall climate change, what caused it, etc., you know, I'm not here to debate that. What I will tell you is these events are going to impact the housing market. So, okay, Brattleboro, number 1, Rochester at 10.26%. Now, this one is interesting because I had heard that Rochester stuff was moving very quickly. So if any of you have any insight, please let me know. Oakton, Virginia, this is kind of a suburb of DC, more wealthy, tracking this for someone, but fascinating just because I've heard in other places in Virginia, DC, inventory is moving really fast. So up at 7.59%. Encinitas up at 4.58%. Rosemary Beach up at 4.35%. So again, this is 38. I talk a lot about this. I will be visiting Rosemary Beach as I go down to Florida, so I will keep you guys posted. So now I added something cool. Well, I think it's cool. I don't know if you'll think it's cool, but this is just, I'm doing a 6 week average on average number of listings. Now that I have this core population and I've had it for some time, we can start doing some fun stuff with the data. So I'm using a 6 week average, and I'm saying top cities with largest percent increase in inventory compared to that 6 week average. And I think this is going to be very interesting to watch. So, number one, Bozeman at 5.54%. Number two, San Ramon at 4.35%. Number three, Encinitas at 4.32%. Number four, Bakersfield at 3.5%. And then number five, Cleveland at 3%. Now, Cleveland, I've heard, Ohio is a bit of a hot spot. So, very curious. We'll watch it. This is, just to the average 1 week. We'll see what's going on. So, interesting. And then our top 10, we did have somebody get kicked out of the top 10. Boston got kicked out of the top 10 with largest percent increase in inventory since the start of year. And Carlsbad took their place. So that, we'd had a pretty set top 10. So this is actually going to be interesting to watch. But so this is top percent increases since the start, which was January. San Ramon, 93%. Coeur d'Alene, 85%, San Francisco, 64%, Denver, 56%, Austin, 54%, Galveston, 41%, Portland, 41%, Seattle, 37%, San Jose, 36%, and Carlsbad at 32%. So, interesting mix of cities, guys. I think it's kind of representative of some of the things, trends that we're hearing. Portland up there, Seattle, these are all very interesting. And then California taking out Boston and Carlsbad. So interesting movements. Again, we're watching it. We're going to see what happens. Okay, so for rent, really focused right now. I posted, and I'll put this in the show notes, maybe not today, but soon. It's a ProPublica article about Real Pages that it's an interesting, I'd read it previously, but I've been using Real Pages for 6 months, and I can tell you, I just have been very confused by the lack of movement. So check out that article, read it. I still think it's important. I'm going to keep using Real Pages, but I'm probably going to pull it once a month and focus more on kind of these listings, as well as I have a new connection where I may be able to get more rental data. So I'm excited about that as well. So that is one thing I did while I was away from you guys. I really did keep up with some clients, meet with some data providers, really working hard to figure out how to bring you guys the best information. So wasn't completely away. Okay, so focus then this week is going to be kind of the top cities with highest percent increase of single family listings, rental listings. So number one spot, interesting, Sevierville, up at 18.75%. So that is, again, interesting. They had those increases in listings for sale. We know this is an Airbnb mecca. When I get back from Florida, I'll likely spend a week in Sevierville in an Airbnb, so I'll probably be doing a show from there. Number two, Brattleboro, 13% increase in listings. So not only did you have your increase in listings for sale in Brattleboro, but you also for rent. So we'll keep an eye on that, especially with events in Vermont. Bozeman up at 10.22%, Oceanside 9.28%, and Asheville at 5.43%. So you can see of the cities I'm tracking, the ones where we had the increases in rent, guys, these are all Airbnb meccas, all of them. So, we'll keep our eye on this, but this is exactly the type of movement I would expect to see. Okay, top cities with the highest percent increase of single family rental listings to average. So again, I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing for listings for sale. I'm really excited about this. So this is a 6 week average. So top spot goes to Cape May, but it's like a huge exponential jump, but that's because they don't have a ton of properties to list for rent. So it's like an 80% increase, but very small number. So keep that in mind. Winter Garden in Florida up 22%, Sevierville up 18.75% to average, Bentonville up 14.48%, Augusta up 13.81%. So some interesting movement there with Sevierville, Bentonville. I'm also very curious about. I've heard a lot about excess inventory there, but have not really seen it in any of my numbers. So that one will be one we keep an eye on. Then the top cities with the highest percent decrease of single family listings. Now, I find this one interesting because I have, I don't know if it'll ever bear out, but kind of a theory that perhaps where we're seeing some decreases in rentals, people are selling and going into rentals. I don't know. We'll see how that pans out. But number one is Victor, West Virginia. Again, a place with small numbers, so don't that anything can move that down at 25%. But number two, El Cajon at down 19.57%. Washington, D.C. Down almost 12%. Encinitas down 11%. San Ramon down 10%. And Rosemary Beach down 10%. Again, though, what could be happening here is that these are being listed for short-term rental. I'm working with some data providers. I'm scared to even tell you how excited I am that we might even be able to get these listing histories in data format, which would be huge. So stay tuned, guys. And then finally, super excited, Airbnb. So now we have listings. We have your average daily rate, ADR. I'll be adding occupancy, etc. In the next few weeks. So this is so exciting. But so for the first time ever, top cities of the cities I track, highest percent of Airbnb listings in June. Highest number of Airbnb listings in June. So New York at over 26,706 listings, Miami 14,630, Las Vegas 13,072, Los Angeles 11,847, Houston 11,776, Austin from this data 11,072, and this is a good time to pause. Inside Airbnb has this number much higher. And so again, this kind of goes to the different data methodologies, how they pull it, how they pull off the site maps. Are they using actual data? Are people using modeled data? There's all different ways to look at this, and I'm really digging in. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'll tell you that we won't just use one data source. As I said, I'm working with a team to really come up with the best data sources that probably takes all these things into consideration and triangulates and gives you a much better number here. But directionally, I think we'll be able to use these disparate data sources to really figure out what's going on. And by the way, inside Airbnb data is out. Again, they do that quarterly for only, a handful of cities. So I'll probably do some sort of comparison next week and discussion about the different data methodologies. Number 7, Atlanta at 10,907 listings, San Diego at 10,115 listings, Orlando at 9,335 listings, and Nashville at 8,105 listings. So these cities, top 10. I did a tweet this week about Dallas. Only 34% of the Airbnbs there are legal, basically. That's going to cause a lot of noise. So it's important to know how many of these things exist. If you're trying to buy, you will want to know where they are. You will want to know how many there are. Because anybody could pull a Dallas and sort of say, listen, nope, it's illegal. And so all kinds of stuff could happen in your market where you're sitting there and you're thinking you made a really great choice. And then suddenly you have, 2,000 properties hit the market and they saturate listings for sale. And suddenly your home price has gone down. These are the kinds of things that I want you to be armed with when you're making decisions. And then this is cool. So top cities with the highest decrease in average daily rate. And so San Ramon, and this is May to June, down at 31%. Victor, West Virginia, down at 16%. Destin at 12.5%. Ventura at 7%. Rosemary Beach, again here at negative 6.49%. Palm Springs down -5%, Knoxville 5%, Chicago down 3.5%, Nashville down 2.9%, 6%, and Sedona down 2.87%. Again, these are interesting to watch. Okay, then quickly on commercial real estate, it's just coming fast and furious now, guys. But what I find fascinating is even people that I really respect and I think know the market really well still have this idea that Class A buildings are going to be just fine. What I have seen, I did that Substack called The Dreams of Yesteryear. And if you didn't read it, I recommend it because in Pittsburgh, I was right next door to an office complex of 20 Class A office buildings that are never going to come back, not in the way that would make anyone whole. Maybe they make a college campus out of it, but that is going to take years. I don't know. And so then I talk about, the Howard Hughes Center in Las Vegas, another 12, building complex at least of Class A buildings. Nobody's coming back there. They've built all these exurb, massive office complex that are much nicer. And nobody wants to drive in that terrible traffic on those terrible roads that haven't been fixed right close to the strip. So I feel like and that's just two examples. I guarantee you, like you take Dallas, who already has a good amount of office vacancy. They've got two massive towers under construction. So I think that, again, this is just a lesson, and you cannot look at things from an aggregate perspective. You just cannot. You have to understand what's under the hood driving those things. And so I hear people that I really respect talking about, how they see this going down. And I think that they may be missing this local color. And that's what I'm trying to do here for you as much as I can, because there's just so much and it's impossible with over 3,000 counties in the United States to really, cover it all. But I'm trying my best to give you information you might not get anywhere else. So anyway, that was a lot of info, a lot of change here for me. I'm trying to make sure and stay sane because there's a lot of disruption. But I'm excited about what we're going to see this summer. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about the new data I'm getting. And I am getting closer and closer to having all kinds of really amazing and interesting data that's going to sort of blow what most people are doing out of the water. So lots going on, as I say over and over, but super excited. Please leave your comments. Thank you for watching. As always, you can find me on Twitter at M3_Melody. You can find me at LinkedIn at Melody Wright. You can find me on Substack, the M3 Melody Substack, and then here on YouTube. So again, thanks for watching. Please reach out with questions and have a great weekend and talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.